Hey y'all, today we're going to talk about hunting and gathering societies, pastoral societies, and the development of civilizations. We start today with hunting and gathering societies. Now these earliest people are most likely to have started in East Africa and then spread throughout the rest of the world. We only think that this probably happened because that's where the oldest remains are found. But if we were to find older remains somewhere else, this theory would have to change. So this is just a theory of how the world became populated. Now, the earliest people were nomadic. These early hunting and gathering societies. They reacted to the environment by following seasonal food supplies. They didn't stay in one place. They constantly had to move around because men hunted, and they had to follow the herds of animals that they were hunting. But the women who were gathering seeds, nuts, berries, and other edible plants would have to move around too, maybe if they ran out of food or if certain foods grew in certain seasons. But because they had such a wide variety of diets, they were pretty healthy. They also had few possessions because they constantly moved. Now even though they didn't have many possessions, they did have some, and these mostly consisted of simple tools that were made of bone and wood and stone. But the most important tool that they had was fire. They used this for protection, for keeping away large animals, for cooking, for warmth, and even for hunting, to try to corral the animals into a place that they could get them. They also traveled in family bands. These were small groups, about 30 to 40, and they all were related to each other. They were also egalitarian, which means that everybody in society was needed for survival, and so they were all treated equally. They all sort of had a role in society. They also believed in a religion called animism, which believes everything, even non-living things, have a spirit and should be respected. Things like mountains, trees, rivers, as well as people and animals, things like that. Now, eventually, pastoral societies developed when they learned how to domesticate animals. And animal domestication simply means that you are taming animals into herds. And a lot of the animals that they domesticated early on were sheep, goats, cows, and eventually horses too. Now, pastoral societies were still nomadic. They still moved around because these large animals had to move around to eat the seasonal food supplies too. Plus, all these animals together would often eat all the food in the area. They'd have to move to another region. And a lot of these herds sort of destroyed some of the landscapes early on as well. They also didn't have very many material possessions because they moved around a lot. But they did have animals, and animals came as possessions, so hierarchy started to form. These animals were considered to be wealth, and some people who had more animals became wealthier and more powerful than others. Eventually, pastoral and hunting-gathering societies transformed into agricultural societies as well. Now, this really occurred after the Ice Age, about 10,000 BCE. The climate of the world sort of warms up. A lot of the ice dethaws, and they're able to grow crops. Now, interestingly enough, they think that women were the first farmers because they were the ones who were gathering plants and seeds and nuts. And so when they stored them in the ground to sort of save them, that's how they think agriculture started. Now, this time period of developing agriculture is known as the Neolithic Revolution, where they invented farming. And this happened about 8,000 BC to 5,000 BC, starting in Mesopotamia, then spreading to other places in the world. And this is really when humans start to take control of the environment. They are managing the environment themselves rather than just reacting to what the environment does. Now, farming does two things for these humans, these agricultural societies. One, it gives them more food than they actually need, a food surplus. And this allows their population to grow because they have enough food. Now, not everybody had to farm for food, but at the same time, they were less healthy because their diet was not as varied. They often ate one staple crop with maybe just a few other things mixed in. This also led to urbanization. where people had to settle in a single place because you can't really move around if you have to tend to your crops. So they settle in a single place, and cities start to rise up in these places where they're living. And now when people are living in the same place, they're going to start to collect possessions. They're not moving around anymore, so they can have something. If they don't have to carry it a long way, they're like, well, this is mine, I'm just going to keep it. So possessions start to really build up as well. Now, food surplus and urbanization lead to job specialization, where people in a society have different jobs. Okay? This could be like pottery, metal worker, boat maker, a builder, all these different things that people could do. And what this allows is that it increases technology. So as people are specializing in a job, they're doing one thing all day long, they can do that better and better and better because they practice at it. Whereas if they were trying to grow crops at one point, and then later on you're trying to build a tool, you're not really going to be able to focus on how good your tools are because you don't have as much time. This also increased the sophistication of art, which is a specialized job, and it began mass trade, because if one person makes something, he needs something that somebody else is making. There's also the food surplus and urbanization led to institutions. Now, an institution is a religious priest or a government official who provides order to society. And these are needed to organize labor for clearing land to grow agriculture, for building cities, and to build irrigation systems that bring water to the crops. And these institutions used writing, so they created the first writing systems to keep records, to communicate, and to codify laws, which means they're going to sort of standardize the laws and the beliefs they had. Now, specialization and institution leads to hierarchy. This is when there's inequality between social classes. You can kind of see in this picture here the different levels in Sumerian society. This is, some of them are rulers, bureaucracy, which is government officials, which might also include priests and warriors, artisans, which are skilled workers, peasants, which are unskilled workers, and then at the bottom you have slaves. And in different societies, the hierarchy looks a little bit different. This is just kind of the general overview. You also have inequality amongst genders, too. Most of these early civilizations are patriarchal, which means the men have all the power and own the property in society. Now, civilization is basically when these 6 things exist. A civilization generally has to have all of these to be considered a civilization. So you have agriculture, which is going to lead to urbanization and a food surplus. These 2 things lead to specialized workers and institutions. Institutions create writing, and then institutions and specialized workers together create social hierarchy. Now, the earliest civilizations started in river valleys. Okay? These are the ones in blue. Okay? Mesopotamia was the first one. And then after Mesopotamia, you also have Egypt, India, which is also called South Asia and the Asian subcontinent, and China, which is also called East Asia. You also have some civilizations that develop that aren't around rivers a little bit later on. Greece, the Bantu, which is really kind of a hunting and gathering civilization, but they develop agriculture later on, and the Olmecs over here. It is important to consider that the hunting and gatherers and pastoralists do continue to exist, but they're just sort of spread out between these civilizations.